Greetings, everyone.
Welcome
So
to the
this week
Thunderdome.
we are finally starting on chapter 1
Yes.
of the Bhagavad Gita. It's titled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Quick summary. Well, the introduction really kind of was more like of the philosophy, but basically you have the two sides, the Pandavas, the Kauravas.
Yeah.
The Pandavas were the rightful heir of the kingdom, and they had their kingdom usurped. That's the Mahabharata. It's a big, long story. But basically, right before the battle is about to commence, Arjuna asks Krishna to drive him in between the armies.
So you can see
So he can see who's all here. What are we really about to get into? And all these powerful kings from all around the world, his family. He has family members and loved ones on both sides of the field, and he's one of the greatest warriors.
Yeah.
And so he sees all of this, and he grew up according to Dharma and knowing the Vedic scriptures. And so in this like moment of, oh my God, like things are about to get real, he basically has a mental breakdown, and he's like, I know it's my job to fight, but how can I fight? Like, how am I going to be able to enjoy the kingdom after I've killed all my family and my friends and my loved ones?
Killing people at you.
So he starts to get emotional, and he knows what he needs to do, but at the same time, because he is compassionate at heart, because he is a devotee of Krishna, and that, even though he's a warrior, he's compassionate. So he becomes bewildered, and so he asks Krishna, like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. So chapter 1 is kind of like setting the stage.
Yeah.
It doesn't get into the philosophy quite yet, but it introduces it's like setting the stage for the other chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's kind of
Yeah.
Anyway, so we will read the Sanskrit, then we will read the translation, and then the purport. And I guess we can just do a few verses and then talk as it feels natural.
Yeah, we'll just go. We'll read for about, like I said, around 40, 45 minutes, and then we can go back to the kids.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Okay, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right. Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Dharmashetre Kurushetre Samaveta Yuyutsava. Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. Translation. Dhritarashtra said. Dhritarashtra is the current blind king of and father of the Kurus, his chief son Duryodhana. Anyway, he's kind of the usurper of the kingdom, and he.
It's like the definition of problems with your in-laws right here. This is like how bad it can get, I guess. And like a really. So
Dhritarashtra said, "O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?" Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Bhagavad Gita is a widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, which is the glorification of the Gita.
Hold on a second. I just wanted to show you, because I was reading this last time to our discussion about the H with a dot under it. It's aha or ihi, depending on what's in front of it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just to throw that out there as we're reading, since we're trying to like get a little bit better at that.
Savaha.
I'll keep this open as we're reading. We can like check each other that way. We can maybe learn as we go.
My Sanskrit is so rusty. Like I literally took 2 years of it when I was in Gurukul.
When you're reading, I can just look and we can do whatever. Even if I just bring it up later or whatever. But then if we don't want to interrupt too much, but
no,
I throw that out there. And then the same thing goes for you. You can roll back there and tell me if I'm screwing something up whenever I'm reading.
Yeah, no, that helps too. Because also there's a nice key in the back where you can look up.
It's really cool that they help you figure that out.
So Gita Mahatmya. There it says that one should read the Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of a clear understanding is that there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, the example of a clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession, without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures. It's true. I've read many of them, and yeah. But the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from time immemorial of the Vedic age. It was spoken by Lord Krishna when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmashetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary, Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want to compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield, because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven. Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battlefield. I don't remember why Kurukshetra was, like what the original significance of it was, but it is mentioned in many other places.
Yeah. I don't know either, but
I don't remember off the top of my head.
A holy place, basically.
Yeah. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasadeva, who is the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the other Vedic scriptures.
Yeah.
And therefore, by the mercy of Vyas, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra, even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana and others would be wiped out, and thoroughly religious persons, headed by Yudhisthira, would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the word Dharmashetra and Kurukshetra, apart from their historical and Vedic importance.
Sanjaya uvacha dristvatu pandavani kam vyudam duryodhanastada acharyam upasangam ya rajavachanam abravit. I don't know what that tune was, but Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army gathered by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and began to speak the following words. Purport. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage. And Sanjaya could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. He wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king, and thus he warned him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjaya therefore informed the king that his son Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief Dronacharya to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician, but Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Pashaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudam Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Purport. Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with King Drupada, the father of Draupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice by which he received the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all of his military secrets when the son of Drupada, Drishtadyumna, was entrusted to him for military education. Now on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Drishtadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who had arranged for their military phalanx, after having learned the art from Dronacharya. Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya's so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this, he wanted to point out also that he should not be similarly lenient in battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to their defeat.
Atrasura Maheshvasa Bhimarjuna Samayudhi Yudano Viratascha Drupadascha Maharata. Yeah, it's a long A. Here in this army there are many heroic bowmen equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. There are also great fighters like Yuyudana, Virata, and Drupada. Purport. Even though Drishtadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were the cause of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, and thus he compared the others with them. I'm not sure if we said this or not, but just in case, what we're reading initially is the translation, and then the purport is basically like Prabhupada expounding upon that and explaining it so that you get like the context and stuff that's going on. But he's keeping them separate so that you know what's the actual word-for-word translation versus what's his expounding upon. But just in case anybody's watching it doesn't know that, we might have said that when we started reading.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I mentioned it a little
bit.
Okay, yeah.
I wasn't sure. Go for it. Text 5.
It also helps. No, it would just be nice. The Bhagavad Gita is amazing, of course, but when you've read the Mahabharata and you've already...
There's a lot of people to try to track. He's going to start naming a lot of people off.
This is essentially one chapter from the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
And it contains, all of the philosophy and everything. But, there's going to be... The first chapter, there's a lot of names of people and kings.
You don't have to follow it all.
Because it's not philosophy, it can be a little like, oh my god, I'm losing track of who
I don't think you have to keep track of everybody, because it gets when it's brought up later, they usually bring up the context around it as well. So I think you don't have to worry too much about tracking it. I mean, if you can, great, but I don't think you have to be like, well, I can't follow this, so there's no point. I don't think it's
of course.
A lot of these people, you don't have to be able to remember whose mother was who in order to get the story. It takes time, kind of like with Game of Thrones, another big fantasy type series where you're trying to watch and keep track of the lineage. It just let it come as it's needed.
Text 5. Drishtaketus Chakitana Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujit Kuntibojascha Shaibyascha Narapungava. Translation. There are also great heroic and powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chakitana, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kuntiboja, and Shaibya. Okay, since this is all kind of one... How about we do this? each speaker, when it changes, will switch it. That way it feels more...
Okay, yeah.
So I'll do Duryodhana, and then the next person... Okay.
Okay.
Yudamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamojascha Viryavan Subhadra Drupadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharata. There are the mighty Yudamanyu, the very powerful Uttamoja, the son of Subhadra, Abhimanyu, and the sons of Draupadi. All of these warriors are great chariot fighters. Ashmakam tu vishishta ye tannibola dvijotama Nayaka mama sanyaisa samgyanartam tan bravimite. But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. Duryodhana is always like trying to flex on everybody, God. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samhitinjaya Ashvatama Vikarnascha Samadatis Tataivacha. There are personalities like you, Drona, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashvatama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta called Burishrava. Burishrava, just a little side note, man, in the battle, like in the Mahabharata, when they actually get into the battle, you learn about all these kings. Some of the kings that were fighting for Duryodhana were actually very noble, but due to circumstances, because Duryodhana was so intelligent,
loyalty.
Exactly, he was so smart, he would like be really good to,
or they'd married into the wrong family, and
Yeah.
now they were beholden by the laws of that time.
Exactly.
And, they had to be on the side of their in-laws or whatever.
So people like Burishrava was like great friends with Arjuna. Ashwatthama was the son of Dronacharya. He was also liked Arjuna. I mean, there was no enmity between them. Bhishma, Kripa. So a lot of these people are like very beloved to Arjuna, which is why he gets so overwhelmed once he actually sees everyone who's arrayed there.
Yeah.
Okay, and the son of Somadatta called Burishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Duryodhana mentions the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana, Ashwatthama is the son of Dronacharya, and Somadati, or Burishrava, is the son of the king of the Balikas. Karna is the half-brother of Arjuna, as he was born of Kunti, and before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya's twin sister married Dronacharya. So Kripacharya was the aunt, or the uncle of Ashwatthama, and...
Kripacharya married the twin sister of Dronacharya? Is that what it says?
Yeah. So he was Ashwatthama's uncle. Anyway, so he fought because he felt loyalty to Drona, and Drona fought because he felt loyalty to the throne, and it was Anyecha Bhavashura Mad Arte Jakta Jivita Nana Shastra Praharana Sarve Yudha Visharada. I don't remember that verse. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in the military science. Purport. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadrath, Kritavarma, and Shalya, all are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. Aparyaptam tadashmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam paryaptam tva idam et paryaptam tvidam etesham balam bhima bhirakshitam. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Purport. Herein, an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who is Arjuna's older brother, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained.
Something I was reading some stories from the Mahabharata like a couple of years back, and
that book that you have.
Yeah, we should read that actually.
Yeah,
it'd be a good
really
introductory into like get into the before we get into the whole thing. But something about like all these people fighting for like they're arguably very spiritual people, possibly not really evil, quote unquote, but they have these vows or these like loyalty ties that force them to kind of fight for the other side. Something that was an interesting story told by Krishna to, I believe to Bhishma, I think was at least what I was reading. I'm pretty sure Krishna was, it was either Krishna or like a representative of Krishna talking to Bhishma and saying that like, because Bhishma was like, well, I swore that I would serve her. And I think he swore that before he knew there was going to be conflict. Like, it was like one of those things where he had already sworn that he
swore loyalty to the throne.
Right.
And due to trickery,
the throne was lost.
The throne was given
and so now he has to feel it. He's like, well, my word is everything.
Yeah.
I've never broken my word. I have to keep my word. And that was like his thing about being this honorable guy who, if he gave you his word, that was it.
Yeah.
He was never changing it. And he already got caught up in some nonsense in the past with it, but he's like, this is just the way it is. And I forgot, the whole story about why he does that is like really powerful, really cool story.
There's always like a backstory to every backstory.
But Krishna basically told him, he said, I can't remember what he said, but he was basically saying like your word, like, always keeping your word doesn't make you a virtuous person.
Yeah.
He's like, one could say that lying is a sin. He's like, and that lying will, so one could say I must always tell the truth. But there is, and he named some sage who always told the truth. He swore that he would never lie. Yeah. He always told the truth, very sanctimonious type person. And he's going to spend forever in hell. And then he said, why? Because murderers and rapists and they came to the village and were attacking this village, and the survivors ran and went by this, sage's like spot. And they all hid somewhere nearby, but the sage was nearby doing his meditation and stuff. Yeah. So these thieves and these murderers came by and they saw the sage, and they came up to the sage and they said, hey, I don't know what to say, if they were just murdering for fun or what the problem was, but they came up like, hey, bandits. Where are these people that ran? Like, did you see them come by? And the sage, because he swore he'd always tell the truth, was like, I can't lie to these guys. So, they're right over there. And they all got killed. And so Krishna said he told the truth, and he is going to pay for that. Yeah. He's like, so it's not as simple. I think a lot of people like to draw like, oh, it's like, this is white, this is black, white, black, black, white. Like, it's like, no, there's all gray area. You can't just assume that this one, like, it's all about context. Yeah, it is. And that's why it's so difficult. Because if it was just a checklist of like, always do this, never do this, then in theory, if you could just get behind that checklist, you'd be good and you'd go right back home. But like, that's not the way it works, because you have to be studied enough and learn enough and take shelter of the more educated people than you, and like get to a point where you actually know which one in the gray area is correct, or know enough to surrender and let someone else choose for you if they're more like, whatever the case may be. Like, and so he was trying to get Bhishma to like, yo, just come over here.
What you're raising, the whole point you're raising is absolutely true. And the whole reason that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken in the first place was to help Arjuna realize that yes, everything isn't black and white.
Right.
And so, because Arjuna, what he does in the beginning is he's taking things out of context. He's saying, oh,
these are virtuous people.
These are virtuous people. I look up to them. And how can I kill my elders? How can I kill my cousins? How can I kill the people that I love? And not only that, Dronacharya, he's a Brahmana. I'm going to go to hell for killing a Brahmana, right? Taking things out of context, forgetting that these very same people, when Draupadi was dragged out, their wife dragged out by her hair.
And they were trying to unclothe her in front
period,
of everyone.
She was in one sari, isolated in her room. Duryodhana's brother comes in there after this gambling match and grabs her by the hair and drags her out in front of everyone, starts stripping her clothes off. Yeah. Bhishma didn't say anything.
No.
Dronacharya didn't say anything.
And that's why he's like, yeah, exactly.
And when she begged them for help, they
if you're
said
enabling the demons,
so
you're
Bhishma,
still...
where's your, and that's why Krishna said, no, these people, they chose their side, and they made their bed, they're going to sleep in it. Yeah. And that's why he's telling Arjuna, the points you're raising are not valid. They're not according to Dharma, because according to Dharma, these people are sinful. Yeah. And it's your duty as a righteous warrior to hold them accountable and bring justice. Yeah. And that's like the whole entire message of the Bhagavad Gita. So Yeah, I'm really excited to like
Yeah.
to get into
I
it.
just
'Cause
thought, I felt like it was sort of a relevant
really,
story
no,
for
of
this
course.
part that we're reading about how these people that he's looking up to in certain ways
He's
are on
looking
the
up
wrong
to
side.
them out of context.
Yeah.
He's thinking of them, well, when we were kids, they were so nice to us. Well, but they weren't. They didn't always do the right thing, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to hold themselves accountable or their leader accountable at a
they
certain point.
weren't
Because one thing,
willing
like you make a
to-
mistake and you go, okay, you know what, that was an error.
Yeah.
Let me get my stuff together. But like, you know,
At a
at some
certain point, they
point,
should have told Dhritarashtra, yo, man, your son is going the wrong way. We need to intervene.
Right.
Here. And they never did.
right, and that's why he's saying like they've made their bed at this point. They've made multiple decisions to stand behind him. We're here at the day of the battle. It's over. Like that's it.
No regrets.
Because it's not like they made one mistake and then like, oh, now we got to kill him because of that one mistake. It's like they've just been backing the wrong guy the whole time, and they know they are. They know they're not doing
The
the right thing.
Mahabharata is so important to read to be able to better take the Bhagavad Gita into context because, it's it's really powerful. This whole story is really powerful. All right, where did I end up? Text 11, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you were reading The Strength of His Friends, and I think you just read this.
His
Bhima
conclusion that he would come out of the
Virakshitam.
battle victorious was well ascertained.
Yes, Bhima, limited of Bhima, yeah.
Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avashtita. I think just the next couple verses, and then you'll be coming up. Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yata bhagam avashtita. Bhishmam eva birakshantu bhavanta sarva eva hi. All of you now must give full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at the respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, he was a very good politician, Duryodhana was. He had a very slick tongue and he knew how to, anyway.
Yeah, he knew how to
Duryodhana,
kind of twist his words around.
Oh, for sure. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Dev was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev, and he was right.
Yeah.
Dude, the first 12 days when Bhishma was in there fighting, oh my god, just decimating people. Like, they couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
It was insane. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word. There we go. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice, while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals and kings in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up, as they had done during the gambling performance. Damn. Tasya sanjanam Tasya sangyanayan harsham kuru vridha pitamaha simhanadam vinadyochai shankam dadmau pratapavan. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, I'm sorry, you can take over after this one. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Purport. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him up by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle, because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection.
Tattha sankascha beryascha pavanaka gomukha sahaishvabhya haya. Oh my goodness, okay. Tata Sankascha Beryascha Pannavanaka what's the end with the thing?
Hold on, it's Tata Shankascha Beryascha.
Oh, Tata Sankascha Beryascha Pannavanaka Gomukaha Sahaisva Bhyahanyanta Sa Sabdas Tumulo Bhavat. Oh my goodness. That's one whole word, isn't it? Sahasaiva Bhyahanyanta.
Damn, Sanskrit, man.
Bhyahanyanta. Oh my goodness. Bhyahanyanta. Goodness, that's one word. Sa Sabdas Tumulo Bhavat. After that, the conch shells, bugles, trumpets, drums, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Tattah svatayer hayer yukti mahati sanjani stitau madavaha pandavaschaiva divyau sankau pradad matu tatasveter hayer yukti mahati sandani stitau madhava pandavaschaiva divyau sankau pradad matu. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Purport. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side, because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Pandu Putranam Yesam Paksi Janardana. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu, because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there, because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu, or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated was donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna.
Cool story.
And this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Yeah, I don't know if I even know that story, but that'd be really cool. Maybe I do like a long time ago, but I don't recall it.
Basically, Arjuna, way before the whole war and everything, I think they were still in exile, the Pandavas. But basically, Arjuna and Krishna are hanging out one day, and they're in the forest hunting or something, and some sage comes up to them. He has like bright, fiery red hair, and he looks all kind of sickly. And it's Agni, the demigod of fire. He's in disguise, and basically there was some king that had been doing these sacrifices for like just decades and decades, thousands of sacrifices, and from all the ghee that was being poured into the fire, he was getting sick from it. And he's like, ugh. And so he went to Indra, Agni, and he's like, yo, like this guy's, I can't take it. I need some real food. Yeah. And so basically, no, I'm sorry, he didn't go to Indra. He went to, he went to somebody, maybe Lord Brahma or somebody, and said, oh, you should go consume this forest, the Kandava forest. Goodness. I think it was the Kandava forest. And, wildfires happen. Yeah, yeah. You know? So he's like, go consume this forest. And the problem was, Indra, there was a Naga that lived in the forest who was friends with Lord Indra and some of the other demigods. And so
a Naga as in a serpent?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and so he would protect it. Every time Agni came to burn the forest, Indra would send rain, and the rain would come.
So he couldn't burn
and he's like, oh man, so he finds Arjuna, and he knows that if anyone can hold his own, it's Arjuna. Yeah. And he's like, he comes in the form of a Brahmana, because as a warrior and a king,
he's supposed to protect the Brahmanas. He has to protect
the Brahmanas, and so he's like, oh, please, can you give me something to eat? And Arjuna's like, oh, of course. Well, actually, I'm Agni. Like, I want to consume this forest. Can you protect me?
Bait and switch.
Yeah, bait and switch.
Can I have some food? Yeah. I actually need to eat that over there. Yeah. I need your help.
This forest, and I just read this to Shruti the other night at bedtime, and it's actually quite and he's like, not only do I want to eat the forest, but I want to consume all the animals and the things living in the forest. I want it all.
Oh my God.
And he's like, I've given my word, and so he basically protects him while Agni's devouring this fire for days. Arjuna stands there, and anyone that comes and tries, he stops it. and at the end, long story short, it's a really cool story, but basically at the end, Agni is so happy, he's feeling better, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to do something special for you. So he gives him this chariot that's like celestial, super sick, with these awesome horses, and then he gives him, just prior to that, Arjuna's like, well, if you want me to protect you, I need a bow that can actually withstand the might of my arms. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I got you. So that's where he gets hooked up with the Gandiva bow. That's where he gets the quiver of inexhaustible arrows. And that is all to prepare him so that when he then fights in the Battle of Kurukshetra, he's got the Gandiva
everything
bow.
He needs,
and he has everything he needs. So
it's
actually an important story.
Imagine having that problem. I need a bow that can support
That's what he
the
says
strength
to him.
of
He
my
literally straight up
arm.
says, like,
I keep breaking my
these
bows.
bows
man.
are not going to withstand the energy of shooting my missiles. And
That's what a guy.
Anyway.
Okay, where was I? Oh, and a great sounding the transcendental conch shells. That's what I read, right?
15 you're on now?
Oh, I'm on 15, okay. Panchajanyam Hirishkesho Devadatam Dhananjaya Poundram Dadmao Mahasankam Bhima Karma Vrikodaraha Dara Vikrodahara. Yeah, alright. Then Lord Krishna blew his conch shell, called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta. And Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Poundram. Purport. Lord Krishna is referred to as Hrishikesha in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity, and in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses.
So I think, can we talk on that a little bit?
Yeah.
I think, so there's a tendency, I think, for people to, well, I want to believe that I have free will without the idea that God, like, my life is predestined and my...
Right.
So what he's saying here, what I'm taking away from this is... So here they're talking about the Lord situated in the heart of all living entities, which refers to Paramatma.
Yeah.
The idea that God is everywhere, and by that definition, he also resides within all living things.
Yeah.
So... But then it's right here, he says, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity.
Yeah.
So when you're not surrendered and you're focused on living, I want to enjoy, I want to be the enjoyer, I want to do this for me, me. Paramatma sees that and says, oh, you want to enjoy, and therefore he takes his hands off.
Mm-hmm.
So now the karma that we are accruing through our pursuing of sense gratification, he's not controlling that.
Yeah.
He's saying, okay, you want to do it, go for it.
Yeah.
Take the reins, go do it. But then, because we are limited by our poor fund of knowledge, we don't always look, just like a kid doesn't realize that this pot on the stove is boiling. If I grab the handle and I pull it down, I'm going to dump hot boiling water on me. They don't think into the future. We don't think into the future when you're constantly chasing after momentary sense gratification. So when you finally give up and, oh, Jesus, like just, or God, you know, Yahweh, whatever, you know, when you finally give up and you surrender, then okay, you're surrendering to me, and in reciprocation with that, I will now direct you. You know, the voice within, it was like something just kind of told me that this is what I was born to do. Meant to. Yeah. Now you're tuning into the Paramatma, and the Paramatma is now giving you guidance.
He gives you real enjoyment.
He gives you real enjoyment.
You can't hope for that, or else you're in
back
in that space of pursuing your own stuff.
Yeah.
But he does. Yeah, I think that's really cool. That's a good point. Yeah, he gives us what we ask for.
He does.
It's kind of like the genie, you know? You ask the genie for the wrong thing, you don't think it all the way through.
Exactly.
You don't get what you expected.
Right, you're okay. Yeah, very true.
Or you change your mind later. It's maybe, but luckily in this case, unlike with the genie, it's not too late. You can change your mind later.
Never too late.
Your spirit soul is
Look at
eternal.
Ajamil.
You got
It's
all the
never too
time.
late.
Yeah, you got all the time. It might take several lifetimes, but you got all the time.
The Lord
However much
situated.
suffering you want to deal with. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses. But he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here
So that would be like somebody like Jesus or you know, Prabhupada or you know, any of these personalities that come down and people are just like, whoa, like they're supercharged, very enlightened individuals. That's because they're tapped into something that is beyond anything, you know.
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely tell when you're in the presence of people like that. It's just like so much energy, so much charisma, so much they got it like that.
Yeah.
But it's because they're surrendered, and Hrishikesh is at the wheel.
You're darn right.
Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Hrishikesh. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudeva because he appeared as the son of Vasudev. His name is Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandana because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Partha Sarathi because he worked as a charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Partha Sarathi. Similarly, his name is Hrishikesha because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. I just realized, so Hrishikesh, because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, it's like Arjuna literally was like, take the wheel. Like, this is like the embodiment of that ideal, of that idea, of that
he was his chariot driver, literally and spiritually. Yeah, it's really cool. It's so the amount of levels of just like it's beautiful.
Okay, I'll just reread that because I think... So Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as Vikrodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon Hidimba. So the particular types of conch shell blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers, I'll bet.
Not the Kauravas. They're probably like shaking in their boots like,
On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle, and that was the message announced by the sounds of the conch shells. Wow. And who's reading next? What is this? Is this still continuing?
18.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do this last. Okay. I'll do this other one, yeah. Anantavijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Sugosha Manipushpakau Kashyascha Parameshvasha Sikkandi cha Maharatha Dristadumno Viratascha Satchakis Chaparijadita Drupadao Dropadeyascha Sarvesha Prithivipate Saubaudrascha Mahabahu Shankam Dadmu Pritak. Oh, Dadmu Pritak. Shankam Dadmu Pritak. Okay.
On the side, when I read it to myself at home, I like to go through sometimes the word for word because it's interesting to see which words they repeat multiple times, especially when there's one that keeps popping up. I like to go in and actually see what the anyway.
Yeah, it's cool. Like cha means also. It's why it's repeated so much in longer ones. So they're saying also. King Yudhisthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijay, and Nakula and Sahadev blew the Sugos and Manipushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighters Sikkandi, Dristradumna, Virata, and the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, the sons of Draupadi, and the others, O king, such as the son of Subhadra, greatly armed, all blew their respective conch shells.
So,
imagine the noise
can you
that
imagine being there? Like, you're in the temple and one conch shell goes off and you're like, wow. You're on the battlefield and there's like millions of men assembled, and then you have these heroes that are like, Bhima or some.
I know.
God,
that's incredible.
Dang, that must be like super intense.
Awesome. Purport.
Yeah.
Sanjaya informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The sons already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty... What did I say, sons?
The sons, yeah.
The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle. Beginning with the grandsire Bhishma, down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from many states of the world, all were present there, and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra, because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. Whew, that's intense. I don't know, we're around 45 minutes. I don't know if you want to, what are the kids' status? Do you want to check? Do you want to keep going? How do you?
Yeah. Well, here, let's read, let me read the next two, and then we'll stop there, because that's where Arjuna starts talking to Krishna.
Okay, that works. Let's do that.
So text 19, Sagosho Dhritarashranam Hridayani Yadharayat Nabascha Pritivam Chaiva Tumalo Yanunandayan. Translation. Excuse me. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, vibrating both in the sky and on earth, and it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. I'll bet it did. Purport. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned. But in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrating from the Pandavas' party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. Basically, they are on the side of righteousness.
They know.
There is not, so they know deep down in their hearts that what they're doing
is wrong. They know
the
wrong. Supreme Lord is not going to be sitting over here with them if they're doing the wrong thing.
Exactly.
Like, he's not hanging out with the people committing the sins.
Yeah. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamities. Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. I mean, here, Arjuna, people all throughout history, other people that freaking surrender and like, gee, look at Jesus, man. He's on the cross getting crucified. He's asking for forgiveness of the people that nailed him to the cross and stabbed him with the spear. And he's like, no, like, supreme, he understands that's just where the Lord wanted me, whatever. Vyadarayat. I was wanting to see which word was shattered. Vyadarayat. Shattered. Anyway. Text 20. Ata vyavashtitan dristva Dhritarashtran kapidvaja pravrite shastra sampate Danar udamya pandava rishikesham tadavakyam idamaha mahipate. Translation. At that time, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, seated in the chariot bearing the flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows. O king, after looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra drawn in military array, Arjuna then spoke to Lord Krishna these words. Purport. The battle was just about to begin. It is understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas. Just on quick numbers, the Kurus had assembled 11 Akshauhini divisions, which I'd have to look into the Mahabharata. It tells you how many men, there's a certain amount of elephant warriors, chariot fighters, infantry, cavalry that make up an Akshauhini. So the Kauravas had 11 divisions. The Pandavas only had 7. So they were almost outnumbered 2-1. Yeah, they were. So Duryodhana is thinking, we're gonna steamroll their, he's all puffed up. But then he sees, because Arjuna was Dronacharya, who is the general of the Kauravas, Arjuna was like his number one disciple. He taught him things that he didn't teach to anybody else. Yeah. And so when Duryodhana sees, oh crap, like Arjuna and Drishtadyumna, they arranged this army like. He started feeling, he's worried. He's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Like, so then to kind of make himself feel better is now why he's coming to, oh, Grandfather Bhishma, make me feel better, man. And then, okay. It is understood from the above statements that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas, who were guided by the direct instructions of Lord Krishna on the battlefield. The emblem of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna is another sign of victory, because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Ram in the battle between Ram and Ravana, and Lord Ram emerged victorious. That's another cool story we can get into another time about why he had Hanuman on his chariot flag. Now both Ram and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Ram himself, and wherever Lord Ram is, his eternal servitor Hanuman and his eternal consort Sita, the goddess of fortune, are present. Therefore, Arjuna had no cause to fear any enemies whatsoever. And above all, the Lord of the senses, Lord Krishna, was personally present to give him direction. Thus, all good counsel was available to Arjuna in the matter of executing the battle. In such auspicious conditions, arranged by the Lord for his eternal devotee, lay the signs of assured victory. So we will stop there. We'll pick up with text 21.
Yes.
And
awesome. Thank you for listening, everyone. Yes. And we'll see you again shortly.
Yes.